There are 3 minutes left on the clock. The Los Angeles Lakers are down by 6 points in Salt Lake City, one of the hardest places in the entire NBA to win a road game. The crowd at the Delta Center is so loud that the players can barely hear their own coaches screaming from the sideline. And somewhere in the middle of all that noise, a Utah Jazz player is laughing. He's laughing because 40 seconds earlier, he said something to Kobe Bryant that he thought was clever. Something he'd been waiting for the right moment to say, the kind of trash talk that lands best when the scoreboard is already doing half the work for you. He said it loud enough for the bench to hear, loud enough for the referees to hear, loud enough that a couple of his teammates grinned despite themselves. And Kobe hadn't responded, hadn't looked at him, hadn't changed his expression at all, just turned and walked back up the court, like the words had passed through him without finding anything to grab onto. The Jazz player took the silence as confirmation. He thought Kobe had nothing to say because there was nothing to say. He was wrong about that. He was wrong about almost everything he believed in the next 3 minutes. And by the time the final buzzer sounded, he would understand the difference between a player who talks during a game and a player who talks through the game itself, through every possession, every decision, every shot taken, and every shot not taken, until the talking that matters is done on the scoreboard and nowhere else. His name was Derek Shelton. He was a power forward in his 4th year with the Utah Jazz, a physical, defensive-minded player who had carved out a respectable role in the league through toughness and a refusal to be outworked in the paint. He wasn't a star. He wasn't supposed to be. His job was to make the other team uncomfortable, to set hard screens, to contest shots, to do the dirty work that made space for the Jazz's actual offensive players. He was genuinely good at that job. And being genuinely good at a hard job in the NBA requires a certain kind of confidence that, in Shelton's case, had gradually expanded past its useful borders. The Jazz were playing the Lakers in late January 2002, a season where Los Angeles was defending back-to-back championships and Utah was fighting to stay relevant in a Western Conference that was getting harder every year. These games carried weight beyond the standings. The Jazz crowd was passionate to the point of being hostile, and the Delta Center had a reputation as one of the most punishing road environments in basketball. Players talked about the noise, the altitude, the way the energy of the building seemed to actively work against visiting teams in close games. Kobe Bryant was 23 years old. He had already won 2 championship rings, had already established himself as one of the premier players in basketball, and was in the middle of what most observers recognized as a significant leap, a season where something in his game had shifted from excellent to something harder to define. He was moving differently, thinking differently, anticipating the game several possessions ahead in a way that his opponents were starting to notice without being able to fully articulate. His coaches talked about it in film sessions. His teammates felt it during practice. His opponents felt it during games, usually in the 4th quarter, usually when it was too late to do anything about it. The first 3 quarters had been physical and close. Utah had played well, executing their offense with precision, getting good looks, defending hard. The Jazz had built their 6-point lead gradually, not through any single explosive run, but through the kind of sustained grinding competence that was the hallmark of Jerry Sloan's teams. They'd made Kobe work for everything he scored, doubling him in the post, running a second defender at him whenever he caught the ball in space, refusing to give him clean looks. Shelton, in particular, had been physical, using his size and willingness to absorb contact to make Kobe's drives into the paint more complicated than Kobe preferred. And Kobe had let it happen. Not because he couldn't respond. Anyone watching closely could see that Kobe was picking his spots, conserving something, managing his effort in a way that looked almost like passivity, but wasn't. It was the basketball equivalent of someone saving their best argument for the moment when it would be most devastating, rather than spreading it thin across an argument that didn't need it yet. Shelton didn't see it that way. Shelton saw a player who'd been contained, who'd scored 21 points in 3 quarters, but hadn't taken over the game the way Kobe was supposed to take over games. And with 6 points cushion and 3 minutes left in Salt Lake City, Shelton felt the moment arriving to say what he'd been thinking. They were at the free throw line side by side, waiting for a Jazz player to shoot. Shelton leaned slightly toward Kobe, not enough to draw a technical foul, just enough to make sure the words landed. "You've been quiet tonight, man," Shelton said. "Might be time to admit this just ain't your night." He didn't say it with hatred. He said it the way experienced trash talkers deliver their best lines, almost conversationally, with the comfortable tone of someone stating something that seems obvious. He even smiled when he said it. Kobe looked at the free throw shooter. He said nothing. He showed nothing. The shot went in. The Jazz led by 7. The crowd erupted. Leon Jenkins, a veteran Lakers guard who'd been standing nearby, said later in an interview that the moment Shelton said those words, he glanced over at Kobe expecting to see something: anger, irritation, the slight hardening around the eyes that players get when trash talk actually lands. He saw none of those things. What he saw instead, he said, was harder to describe. "It was like Kobe just filed something away," Jenkins said, "like a drawer closing. Very quiet, very neat. And then he was just completely present again." I'd seen that before, and it never stopped being unsettling. The Lakers inbounded the ball. Kobe caught it on the wing, 22 feet from the basket, with Shelton closing out hard. Without hesitating, without taking an extra dribble, without doing anything to indicate the shot was coming, Kobe pulled up and released. The ball went in without touching the rim. 6 points. Nobody called a timeout. The Jazz pushed the pace back up the court, trying to get a quick answer before the Lakers could build any momentum. Their point guard found Shelton on a short roll in the paint, and Shelton caught it in a position he usually finished from. Good angle, one defender late. The kind of shot that accounted for a significant portion of his points every season. He went up, and Kobe, who had no business being in that area of the court on a defensive rotation that fast, appeared from somewhere to Shelton's left and altered the shot just enough. It clipped the backboard and bounced away. Lakers ball. The crowd's noise shifted almost imperceptibly, not quieter but different in quality, like a current that had changed direction without anyone deciding to change it. The next possession, Kobe drove baseline. The Jazz sent a second defender. Kobe stopped, let the help defender commit fully, and passed to the corner where a Laker hit an open 3. 4-point game. 1 minute and 48 seconds remaining. The Delta Center was loud, but it was a different loud now. The Jazz called timeout. Jerry Sloan drew up the play carefully, a set designed to get their best scorer an open look and ice the game. The players nodded and went back onto the court. What happened in the next 90 seconds was the kind of thing that gets described poorly in box scores and perfectly in memory. It doesn't reduce to statistics easily, because its most important quality wasn't what Kobe did, but how he did it, with a comprehensive, almost serene understanding of exactly what the game needed from him at every single moment, no more and no less. The Jazz ran their play. Kobe read it from the moment it started, moved before the pass was made, and deflected it into the backcourt. Jazz ball, but the momentum of the possession was broken, and they had to reset with the shot clock ticking. Their second option was a mid-range jumper from their shooting guard, a decent look, but Kobe had made him catch it a step further from the basket than comfortable, and the shot came off short. Lakers rebound. 51 seconds, down 2. Kobe brought the ball up himself, waving off the point guard with a single hand. Everyone on the court and everyone in the building understood what was happening now. The Jazz sent 2 defenders at him before he even crossed half court. He let them come, dribbled through the pressure with a patience that looked almost arrogant, and when the double team committed fully, he split it with a change of direction that should not have worked in that amount of space, and drove to the basket. The foul was inevitable. He drew it and stood at the line with 38 seconds left, the Delta Center making enough noise to register on nearby weather equipment, and made both free throws like he was alone in a gym on a Tuesday morning. Tied game. Derek Shelton stood at half court with his hands on his hips. His expression had changed from the confident looseness it had carried most of the night to something more compressed, more careful. He wasn't panicking. He was a professional, and professionals don't panic visibly. But something had shifted in how he was holding himself, in how he was processing the fact that the game he'd felt in his possession 4 minutes ago had moved somewhere else entirely. The Jazz worked quickly, knowing they needed a basket before time expired. Sloan called for a play that had worked all season, designed to get their center an entry pass in the post for a high-percentage shot. The pass went in. Kobe was nowhere near the post play. He was on the weak side watching. The center turned to shoot, and then, in the peripheral vision of everyone watching, something happened. Kobe moved. Not toward the ball, not with any apparent play to make. Just a step well-timed and precise into the passing lane between the center and the outlet he was looking for after the drive. The center pulled the ball back, recalculated, and took a contested turnaround jumper that he had no real business taking. It went long. Lakers ball, 8 seconds. The timeout the Jazz called stopped time, but couldn't stop what was already in motion. When they came back on the court, the game was effectively over, even though the clock said otherwise. The Jazz knew it. The Lakers knew it. The crowd, which had been processing everything in real time, seemed to know it too. The noise carrying a slightly different quality now, the specific sound of a home crowd that has watched something slip away and hasn't fully accepted it yet. The final basket was a mid-range jumper from the right elbow. Kobe caught it off a screen with Shelton closing out, gathered himself in the half-second before contact arrived, and shot over an outstretched hand. It went in as the final buzzer sounded. Lakers by 2. The visiting locker room was controlled chaos in the way that winning locker rooms always are. Loud, relieved, the specific joy of people who've done something hard in a hard place. Kobe sat at his locker, already unwrapping his ankles, talking calmly with a teammate about a defensive rotation in the second quarter that still bothered him. He'd scored 11 points in the final 3 minutes. He'd taken over the game so completely and so quietly that several media members, comparing notes afterward, realized they'd all had the same experience, watching it happen and not quite being able to identify the moment it started, just the moment they realized it was already done. Someone asked him about Shelton's comment at the free throw line. The reporter had been tipped off by someone who was close enough to hear it during the game. Kobe looked up from his ankle wrapping. He was quiet for a moment, not because he was searching for words, but because he was deciding which ones were worth using. "I didn't hear him," Kobe said finally. The reporter pressed gently. Someone nearby had heard him clearly. Kobe looked at the reporter with an expression that was neither hostile nor particularly warm, just clear, the way things look when there's nothing complicated behind them. "I'm not saying he didn't say something," Kobe said. "I'm saying I didn't hear him, because what he was saying wasn't relevant to what I was doing." He went back to his ankles. Derek Shelton played 6 more seasons in the NBA before transitioning to a front office role with a Western Conference team, where he became known as a sharp evaluator of defensive talent. He was respected in those circles for his basketball intelligence and his ability to identify players whose competitiveness would translate under pressure. He interviewed well. He communicated clearly. He understood the game in ways that his playing career had never fully showcased. He was asked once at a league scouting conference what the single most instructive experience of his playing career had been. The room expected an answer about development, about a coaching relationship, about learning a system or a skill. Shelton thought about it for longer than the question seemed to require. Then he talked about a game in Salt Lake City in 2002, about a comment he'd made at the free throw line that he'd thought was well-timed and turned out to be the worst-timed thing he'd ever said. Not because it made Kobe angry, he explained, because it didn't. Because Kobe had absorbed it and converted it into something useful without ever acknowledging the transaction had taken place. "That's when I understood," Shelton said, "what it actually means to be locked in. Locked in doesn't mean emotional. It doesn't mean fired up. It means the outside world genuinely stops mattering, because what you're doing is so specific and so demanding that there's no available space for anything else." I gave him my best trash talk and it went nowhere, because there was nowhere for it to go. He was already completely somewhere else, somewhere I couldn't follow him. He paused. The room was quiet. "I stopped using trash talk that night," he said, "not because it doesn't work. It works fine against most people. I stopped because I realized I'd been using it partly to manage my own anxiety during games, to feel like I had leverage, like I was in control of something. And Kobe showed me that a player who's actually in control doesn't need to do that. He doesn't need to reach outside the game to find his confidence. It's already there. It's already everywhere. 3 minutes, 11 points. 2 free throws made in the loudest building in the Western Conference. 1 game, 1 on the road, quietly, the way the best ones always are. And somewhere in the memory of everyone who was there, a drawer closes. Very quiet, very neat.